Hey, go ahead and keep eating. I know some of you just got your lasagna and you're doing your dessert, so keep up with that. But let's thank that banquet team. That's Rudy and Angie, their life group. Also, Jeff Whitnauer is part of that banquet team. And let's thank our students, student ministry, for our service. Very cool, very good. And I want to thank all of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your involvement, your participation at Crossroads. We couldn't do what we do week in, week out with all of you. You're the leaders, the core of Crossroads. You're the foundational leaders. And when I look around, I see people leading, having influence in all the different areas here at Crossroads. Everything from hospitality to traffic teams, facility teams, guest services, the hosts here at weekends, facility team, I don't know, did I say that? I think I did. Also our arts and music, care ministry, financial leaders, all of you people that work with children, students, special needs. We could not do what we do week in, week out, 52 weeks a year, sharing the message of God's love and grace and acceptance with anyone who walks in those doors without what you do. And as I looked around here a little bit ago, I saw 3 couples that are founding members of Crossroads here that are still leading. And so, Greg and Sherry Pyburn, would you stand? Over there, stay standing. Stay standing. Where's Don and Melinda Russell? Don and Melinda, stay up. Tom, where's Tom and Renita Bosinger? Why don't you guys stand? Tom and Renita? Where are they? Over here. Tom's here. Let's thank these guys. Awesome. Awesome. I look at them and I'm reminded, all of us are here because of the sacrifice and generosity of people that have gone before us. And I thank them so much for taking a daring step of faith with me 20 years ago. But none of us would be here without leaders like that. And I'm so grateful that they continue to lead. And without all of you, we would not be poised to take the next step of daring faith, to expand the kingdom of God along the Front Range and beyond, without everything that you do. And tonight, I've said it's going to be a historic night, and it is. We're going to make decisions tonight that are going to affect all eternity. And if you sense an urgency in me, and if you have over the course of this daring faith time, you're right. There is an urgency. The vision that God has given us through daring faith is so crystal clear. Establishing medical clinics in the Congo. Building multi-site campuses along the Front Range. Expanding our own kids ministry. Our special needs ministry here at Crossroads. And then special needs programs beyond our campus. Extending compassion to people in our area. All of these things. Investing in the next generation. I mean, if a Christ follower's heart does not get on fire for stuff like that, I go, the wood for their fire is wet. Really is. And what about the reality that 18% of the people along the Front Range are not part of any faith community? That means like 60,000 people in the Front Range are part of a church. 340,000 people within a 20, 30-mile radius of us right here. They have no faith community, no place that they go regularly to hear about the God who created them and loves them, and that they can have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Really. And these statistics cause me great concern. Great concern on one hand, but great excitement on the other, because of the opportunity that God has placed in our pathway. And yeah, there's an urgency. And tonight is important. It's historic. Because God has always said to us, and God continues to say to us, there's thousands and thousands of people in this area that don't have a relationship with Christ. don't know that God loves them and not part of his family. And God is counting on the witness of our church to burn brighter than ever in the future, to continue to be a beacon of hope, where we say to people, hope is right here. It's right here, because here's where you'll understand the life-changing message of Jesus Christ. And wherever you are in your relationship with God, you're welcome in this place. And I think all of you that know me well, you know that reaching people for Christ, it's what I do with every breath I breathe. I mean, I cannot do anything else. I can't. And I'm ready to give all I have to this end through what we're doing at Daring Faith. And we're not guaranteed another opportunity like this. I mean, these kind of opportunities that we have here, they come along like once in a lifetime. You get another opportunity to make an impact upon thousands and thousands of people's eternity. I go, great. That's great if you get an opportunity like that again. But make no mistake, this decision that we're making, commitments we're making tonight, they have eternal consequences. And here's another reality. This is critical for us to understand. You know the saying, so goes the leaders, so goes that organization. And that applies to churches. So goes the church, leaders, so goes that church. The church goes no further than where we take it as leaders. And we're all leaders together. And there's no secret whatsoever that for Crossroads to achieve the vision that God has put in front of us, the same will be needed leadership from all of us. And we're the people in this room. We're the ones that carry the leadership responsibility, that weight for this church. All of us right here. And it's undeniable. That's why they call it leadership. We're willing to do what many followers are unwilling to do. And so tonight, it's my privilege to extend to you the invitation. The call to action, it's the same call that David made in 1 Chronicles 28 and 29. David gathered the leaders of the church together, 1 Chronicles 28, 29. Gathered them together, and he extended to those leaders the invitation. Gathered them together, and they made their commitments. They made their offering for the temple. And then, after that, it says, when the nation of Israel heard what those leaders did, they followed their example. And so, this is not a night when we just come and make our commitments. Phyllis and I could do that anytime. You could do that anytime. This is a historic night, because this is a night when we go first. We go first. We set the pace for this entire church. And it's my privilege to invite you into this great, grand, redemptive endeavor God has placed in front of all of us. And I think it's such a privilege. I'm blown away by the fact that God has allowed us to be part of his great work in this world. And we've got a 20-year history of daring faith and loving sacrifice. Many of you remember that over the 20 years. Maybe this will help you remember it even more.
Northern Colorado, from the breathtaking vista of Long's Peak to the crisp waters of the Poudre and Big Thompson rivers to the fertile fields of the Front Range Plains, over 600,000 people called Northern Colorado home. For 20 years, Crossroads Church has made its home in the shadow of the Front Range foothills. Maybe a more apt description would be to say that thousands of people have made Crossroads their church home for 2 decades. Crossroads started when John and Phyllis Smith gathered a group of 20 people who were asked, "What kind of church would you like to attend?" They made a list of everything they wanted in a church. Greg Pyburn took the list, ripped it in half, and asked the group a different question. What kind of church would your unchurched friends like to attend? What kind of a church would you like to invite them to? Growing a church that unchurched people would love to attend has been the heartbeat of Crossroads from the beginning. It's our passion. It's our spiritual DNA. It's the drumbeat that we march to. On January 6th, 1996, Crossroads held its very first service at Mary Blair Elementary School in Loveland. That year, hundreds and hundreds of people responded to the fresh wind of God's Spirit blowing through the community. People who hadn't been in church in years came and heard the good news like it was good news through the vibrant music, down-to-earth messages, and community of loving people. We soon moved from Mary Blair to Conrad Ball Middle School and then to Loveland High. After 8.5 years meeting in 12 different locations, it became apparent that we needed a place of our own. So we purchased 73 acres, developed a site plan, and on June 2nd, 2003, broke ground. Hundreds of devoted people outlined the building and drove their stake into the ground with this prayer: may this be a place of life and hope and joy for thousands of people who will experience the life-transforming love and power of Jesus. Because of the extreme generosity of a devoted core, with deep gratitude and a shout of worship to God, on October 24, 2004, the first service at 57th and Taft was celebrated. Droves of people flew into the parking lot, where people once again caught the vision of Crossroads. But Crossroads is not a building, and the church is not a place. Crossroads Church is a vibrant community of diverse people who desire to know God and learn to love each other, no matter who we are, what we've done, or where we've come from. From infants to seniors, atheists to devoted followers, unchurched, no church, de-churched, all are welcome to the lawn. Every weekend, hundreds and hundreds of children, students, and adults can't wait for the weekend experience. People often say, "I always go home feeling better than when I came." It's the touch of God and the love of caring people. Transformed lives is what we're all about. Over 2,000 people have declared their faith publicly by being baptized at Crossroads. Opportunities for help and growth extend 24/7 with ministries like Financial Peace University, kids camps, student gatherings and retreats, special friends, life groups, Stephen Ministers, divorce care, grief share, celebrate recovery, the Global Leadership Summit, next step classes, Bible studies, growth classes, block parties, and well, a lot of other kinds of parties too. We are a compassionate church, caring for others through the Christmas giving tree, Stuff the Truck food drives, Crossroad job fairs, Project 12, Kids Hope, Habitat for Humanity, Congo Kids, Northern Colorado AIDS Project, and single mom car washes and oil changes. When the fury of a local or national disaster strikes our community, we immediately respond by sending teams into neighborhoods where the devastation of a Windsor tornado, the High Park fire, the Colorado flood, or Hurricane Katrina wiped out entire communities and ravaged families. Over 300 people joined a Crossroads relief team and made 13 trips to the Gulf Coast. Project One was birthed on a Gulf Coast trip. It's one church on one day, serving those in our own community who simply need a hand. In 9 years, over 7,300 volunteers have served in 654 projects, and that's just locally. Teams of students and adults have been sent to Guatemala, Mexico, South Africa, Alaska, Spain, China, Haiti, and Sri Lanka. We have a lot to be grateful for in the 20 years of our life together, that's clear. But are we finished? Have we done just about all there is to do? What about the next chapter? Colorado is one of the fastest growing and one of the least churched areas in the United States. Thousands of new homes, new neighborhoods, new schools and businesses are sprouting up along the I-25 corridor. These new neighborhoods are teeming with tens of thousands of people of all ages who have not yet discovered the God who loves them and cares for them. The God who created them with purpose and gifts and a deep need for community. How will we respond to this unprecedented opportunity? Should we sit back and bask in what God has already done through us? Or should we respond with daring faith, trusting that God's work in northern Colorado is just beginning? We celebrate our history with joy and gratitude, and we believe the best days are ahead, which is why God is challenging us with the most ambitious, faith-stretching, and creative campaign in our history. We want to create more opportunities for people to connect with God and take their next step of faith. We want to see more people find hope, healing, and purpose. It's time for the next chapter.
Well, one of our daring prayers from the very beginning was that God would use us, our church, to transform more and more and more lives. And I want you to hear from 3 people tonight whose lives have been touched and transformed by the power of God through our church. So here you go.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jerry Ballinger, and I'm really, really excited about this Daring Faith for our next generation. Dennis asked me to share a few words about how the youth programs here at Crossroads has impacted my daughter, Lily. She is 20 years old, and Dennis told me that I only have 2 minutes, and I have 16 years to cover, so it's going to be a while. So anyways, we're going to start off. Lily is 20. We started attending Crossroads here when Lily was 4 years old. She started off in the preschool. So every preschool program that there was, Lily was involved with it. She went through all of elementary school, going through every program that we had here in the other locations. It was fabulous. Through her junior high and high school years, she was involved with drawing a blank. Middle school and high school, the programs there every single Wednesday night, Fuel and Filter. She would be involved with that on Friday nights. It was fabulous. She had a great time with all of that. She has attended every single summer camp that's been available here at Crossroads. She has been on 4 trips to Moab with the youth groups. She went to Glendo 2 times with the youth groups. She's been to every single face plant, powder burn ski trip that there was available. It was amazing. She's been on 2 mission trips here. She's been involved with Project One. She volunteers for special needs. She's had a fabulous time, but not only having a great time, they played hard in all these programs, but she learned a lot about God. They were required to sit down and have Bible study every night, and she got to learn a lot of the Bible verses, and it was just a fabulous, fabulous time for her. Through all those programs, it has taught her to have compassion, a love for Jesus, and a desire to serve. Last year, she had the privilege to be an intern here at Crossroads. I asked her what the biggest impact that was on her life to be able to serve in that capacity here at church. And she said the biggest thing was the relationship that she had established with the girls of her little group that she was in charge of leading. And so I would like to share with you a little bit of a letter that one of the girls wrote to Lily. She says, "Dear Lily, I want to thank you for helping me to grow stronger in my faith and growing stronger through God this summer. I truly am so thankful for that. You have taught me so much about kindness, patience, and loving God, even when you weren't meaning to. So thanks for everything and being an awesome example." She learned to be that example through the programs that Crossroads established through our youth program. So, Daring Faith, next generation, way to go.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Brandon Graves, and my wife is Heather Graves, and we have been married for 14 years. And, when we first got married, we were just starting out, and tithing was something that we really wanted to do, but we just didn't. Thank you. I don't have to do this all the time. So tithing was something that we wanted to do, but we just really didn't think we could afford to do it. And that really bothered us. And so we started getting involved in church. And we had been involved in church the whole time that we'd been married, but we really started getting involved in church and started seeing the behind the scenes of what makes a church function. And that really, made an impression on us because we thought, it takes commitment. It takes faithfulness for the people who go there to make this happen. And so at the time we were tithing, but not really. we were living our lives, and then we gave what was left over. And so God started doing something in us, and there was a couple things that happened at that moment. One, he really made an impression on us and said, you really should tithe from your first fruits, not what you have left over, and become serious about it. And secondly, he made an impression on us and said, you know what, you're new in your marriage, and it takes an act of faith to be committed to tithing. And so this is really going to strengthen your marriage from here on out. And it's been the best decision that we've ever made as a married couple. So even though Heather and I have been faithful in attending and being part of church our whole marriage, we really have never been part of a campaign like this. And so this is actually a campaign actually stretching our faith even more. And so when we started praying about this, I was immediately, I thought back to just something that happened a few months ago. So, we're kind of in our mid to late 30s, and so it's hard for me to admit, but we're in our late 30s, and our kids are getting a little bit older, and we're thinking about retirement. I mean, it's a ways off, but we're thinking about it, and we've been pretty good about that the whole time. But I thought, our whole finances depends on what's in my head, and that's not good. So we sought out a financial advisor for the first time. And so when we were going through that, I thought, we have an account that I took out like 10 years ago, and it dawned on me, I had not forgotten about it, but it dawned on me, if something happened to that account, I would still get up every day. I've got a job every day. I would still eat. I would not miss that money. And that's not being boastful or anything. It's not a ton of money, but it's just something I had forgotten about. And so when I started praying about daring faith, it automatically hit me. It's like, well, we could use that money to go on a vacation, or we could use it at some point in retirement, or I could put that to use for God immediately. And so now but that's not the only investment that's not the only giving that we want to give, because daring faith is actually calling you to go above and beyond. And so, I thought that would be a good first offering. And so Heather and I have continued to pray about, everything else that we're going to give to this. But anyway, so one last thing I want to share about daring faith is one driving factor for us in giving it above and beyond is the example that we want to set for our children. So we're really excited about our children growing up, and just what we just heard. We want our children to experience that. And so we know that daring faith is going to provide them an opportunity to do that. And we also want to provide an example to them. We've been very open to them about tithing, how much we tithe, and we're going to be very open about what we're going to give here, because we want it to make a lasting impression for them. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Regan, and this is a story about God's faithfulness and how God works in our Crossroads family to transform lives. My faith journey begins when I was 5 years old. My great-grandmother had died, and I was full of questions. I turned to my dad and asked, "What happens after we die?" He answered with a very short explanation. He said one word, and that was nothing. She's nowhere, she's dead, and that's it. My dad never spoke of God, and he disliked church. My mom took us to a very strict church, but I focused on my dad's words about God. I memorized scripture for catechism, and I was confirmed, but I didn't really believe. My dad also struggled with showing any affection towards the family or me. In fact, I was 21 when the first time he said, "I love you." As a teen, I struggled with low self-esteem. My high school had 100 students, and we focused on two things. One was basketball, and the other one was drinking. I was a good basketball player. I dressed for varsity basketball as a freshman, and I loved physical fitness. But I stuck out more than I fit in, and I hated that feeling. And I began drinking and hoping I would be accepted. But I wasn't. and I was bullied every day. But I never got angry. I wanted to have friends so badly. I believed that I deserved the bullying or even asked for it. But my escape was writing. So I would come home and I'd write in my journal for hours. I went into school early to write on the new word processors. But then a teacher noticed my schedule, and he came in early as well. And he abused me. I told no one, and I stopped writing. During college, I won a Ms. Fitness competition. I trained intensely, and I was free to follow my love for health. However, my identity and worth stemmed from this award, and it came at a price. I became very sick with anorexia and bulimia. Then one Halloween night, it all came to a head. I was dressed up as a happy clown, but I was not happy. I went to every bar, and I got so drunk, I was staggering and sobbing. A friend brought me home, and I revealed the shame of my eating disorder, the empty laxative boxes I had hidden from the world. My friend, though, was speechless and just left. I woke up the next morning, I got in my car, and searched for a spot to drive off the road into a river. I drove into a church parking lot instead. I walked into the church service, and I gave my life to Christ while a stranger prayed over me. I would love to say that I felt awesome, but that's not true. But what is true is that I had hope. God helped me recover from bulimia and anorexia, and I began working through my depression. The scriptures that I needed to memorize in catechism now came alive in my heart. But there were more rough spots to come. A friend from my fitness competition took it hard when he didn't win. I found out later that he had committed suicide. Friends said he struggled with an eating disorder and depression too. I blame myself for missing the signs to help him. That's when I was hospitalized for depression. But eventually I got better, and I returned to the fitness industry, but in a new way. I left my home state of Indiana all by myself, and I worked as a camp counselor in La Jolla, California, for young women that had eating and health challenges. 3 years later, I was baptized with my fiance at the time in a newly planted church in the heart of Chicago. We helped build the new church. We worked at the same place, and I was a mother figure to his 3 children. I realized, though, as much as I prayed, I did not want to marry him. I called off the wedding 3 weeks before the big day. I needed to leave my church, my job, and cut off all ties to his children. He was in a tragic accident 2 years later. He fell off a building and he died. I was told that there was an investigation for suicide. The old ways of thinking of guilt and hatred for myself began to seep back in. But with the help of counseling and Hector, who is my husband now, I kept on healing. And I returned to grad school, and I became an occupational therapist. There was a time in my life that I felt God was very quiet. Hector and I moved to Colorado, and I began to build our family here. I lived in a beautiful place, but I was worried about my family in Indiana and their challenges back home. I felt guilty again, and I was very homesick. This lasted for 4 years. It was not until we came to Crossroads that I felt truly at home. You welcomed us. I first got involved by writing cards to Crossroads people who are sick or suffering. Now I am a trained Stephen minister, and I meet regularly with women who need spiritual support. Since I gave my life to Christ, I have walked through recovery of eating disorders, depression, abuse, shame, and guilt. My relationship with Christ has been my hope through it all. He creates good out of bad, and he finishes what he starts. My health struggle helps me help others become healthy. My love for writing has been recently rekindled with the generous support of my husband and my life group. God is breaking apart the stigma of mental illness through supportive doctors and this church. God has blessed me with being a wife and a mom. He brings me abundant hope on those hard days. God leaves fingerprints of his faithfulness on my heart, and this is just one example. When I returned home, I saw a coffee mug that a friend gave me when I was hospitalized with depression, and it says, "And I am convinced that nothing can separate us from God's love." Nothing. Nothing I have done or have not done. And that word nothing is what my dad used to describe what happens after we die. But that same word brings me comfort knowing that nothing can separate me from his love. He takes something as simple as a word and brings such goodness and hope through it. If he can take one word in my life and turn it into good, look at all the miracles he can do and continues to do today. May nothing separate you from drawing close and near to him. Thank you for listening to my story.
You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours and you are mine. Let's stand and worship together tonight. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you've never failed and you won't start now. So I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Oh, Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Oh, take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Oh, Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Sing out, Spirit, lead me. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine.
Go ahead, have a seat. Well, our guest speaker tonight is Ray Johnston. Ray has been a friend of mine for over 20 years. Ray is a professor, a speaker, a writer, founder of Baywatch Church outside of Bayside Church outside of Sacramento. Bayside Church attracts over 12,000 people every weekend, one of the largest churches in our country, and thousands more attend their multi-sites in the Sacramento area. Ray is also the founder of Thrive Churches International, and the Thrive Church Conference sells out immediately, and 4,000 people gather, people from all over the world, leaders in our own country, for inspiration. Ray has spoken to over 4 million people in the last 10 years, and I've had the privilege to be one, and whenever I can listen to Ray, I want to listen to him. And Ray came to our church to speak at this, spoke at our very first campaign. He came, even though he had to fly in this afternoon, and he has to fly out immediately after this. Ray, I can't thank you enough. Let's give him a Crossroads welcome. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, wait. Don't go in here for a second. Okay, come on over here for a second. Hey, first of all, I want to say it's great to be here. It's great to be back. I was here, how long ago was that?
That would have been in 03. Oh, no, 02. 2000. 2000.
A long time ago. It was like 20 years ago, and I want to say, quit waiting 20 years before having me back, number one, okay? Second thing I want to say, though, is this. You're the only pastor I know who wears a suit. This is pretty impressive, don't you think? Okay?
I do it every week.
And can I keep you, by the way, can I keep you up? Can I keep him up for a second? Okay, good. So can I do a little impromptu
Sure,
dialogue
we
with
can
you?
try
Okay,
it.
here we go. I also want to say a couple things. Number one is this. Walking in here tonight, it felt so good because I was here before this existed. And our church, it feels like there's sister churches. Our worship feels the same. And the environment feels the same. And I walked in, I said to Tim, I said, I like these people. They just feel really good. And, but I don't know you that way. You also have, it was funny, I was sitting there, your drummer is like, they have the highest drummer in America in Colorado. So I'm sure there's another story to that. But it was so cool to be here when this didn't exist. Come back tonight, and but I want to ask you a couple questions. But I want to make a statement here. I get to do this all over the place. Matter of fact, I have to fly home at 10:10. Tomorrow, I am speaking at a deal in Sacramento, a gathering for a retiring pastor, African-American pastor, the most influential pastor in the history of Sacramento. And I get to, I'm like the speaker at the banquet. I'm the token white guy at this banquet. It's going to be an absolute ball, okay? And so I'm flying back to this thing, and I flew in here, had dinner with a friend of mine who's a pastor in this region. And we were talking about you at dinner. And other than the tie, we love everything about, it was funny. I hope you know this. I would come to church here if I lived anywhere near here, because we were sitting at dinner and he's describing you and I'm describing you, and I'm saying, I've known this guy a long time. He has authentic God stuff going on in his life. A lot of pastors are slick these days, or they're hip, or they're programmed or something. You've got authentic God stuff going on in your life. Thank you. You've also demonstrated something most pastors don't, which is a track record of staying faithful to God, faithful to your wife, faithful to your kids, and faithful to this church, even when there were some major ups and some major downs. You have stayed faithful. Most people would have bailed. All this, it's funny, all this is my dinner conversation with these guys. And also, if I can say something to you all for a second, I just wrote a book. And the book, I wrote 2 books in the last 2 years. I wrote a book called Hope Quotient, which basically is, by the way, you were magnificent, your testimony, thank you. I wrote a book about Hope Quotient, which is basically the most important thing about a person is whether they have hope or not. And that book was meant to comfort the afflicted. My second book was meant to afflict the comfortable. And it's titled, Jesus Called, He Wants His Church Back. And in there, I wrote, I am so done with church shoppers and hoppers. And I wrote a chapter in there, and the title of the chapter is Stop Dating the Church. Find one, put some roots down, and don't go anywhere, because you gotta have me in here to preach this sometime, be a ball. Here's the deal, what I'm here to say is this: the future of this church is we're gonna go through this in a second. The future of your church, this is gonna be unrecognizable in 3 to 5 years. But that never happens until a group of people say to God and a pastor and the staff, you've been here a long time too, they say to a group of people at some point has to say, we're not going anywhere. We will pray, we will serve, we will sacrificially give, we will literally put this church on our shoulders, and we will stay faithful, and we will walk it forward into the future that God has for it, and we'll be the people that they're showing slides of 20 years from now and telling the stories about someday. Every church needs that, and you're that for him. And I just want to say thank you, because I love this guy, respect this guy, and so do the other pastors in this community. The one I had dinner with tonight, that was a great conversation. So now, by the way, that's the introduction that you wrote for me. Now, I'm kidding. Okay, so, I got a quick question. How many of you have seen this? This, Tim and I get to do this all the time. I sat down with Tim and I went, this is spectacular. So can I just ask
Yeah.
you a couple questions?
Sure.
Because we're getting ready to do another campaign, and I may steal some of this in Jesus' name. So for example, it says this, the 5 goals of, and your campaign's called?
Daring faith.
Daring Faith. We'll come back to that in a second. The first one is F, which is?
Fill God's house with 5,000 worshipers by our 25th year through multi-sites.
Which,
go ahead.
by the way, in my note, I wrote down, actually I wrote by the F, I wrote future vision. Aren't you glad to be part of a church that has future vision from God? You know what's interesting is? In the Bible, check it out, nothing great ever happened until God gave the people future vision. By the way, you know where you find that? Chapter 1 of everything. Joshua 1, Nehemiah chapter 1. Pick a chapter. Chapter 1 is future vision. Nothing great happens until future vision happens first. You have the ingredient. So I just read that and I went, now I'm excited. Okay, what does the A stand for?
Assist more people that have needs. Compassion stuff, meeting needs of people in our community. Congo Clinic Initiative, starting 2 clinics. Special needs ministry also.
So, and you have special needs. By the way, special needs deal, we have a special needs ministry. Your church just feels like, Baywatch, Colorado. We have a special needs ministry, and I walked out in the courtyard about a year ago. This woman is sobbing. And she came up to me and I was thinking of my sermon, and she said, "Can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Yeah." And she's crying. She said, she grabbed me. She said, "I just want to say thank you." I said, "Why?" She said, "I have a special needs son, and our old church told us never to bring him to church again because he was too disruptive." And she said, "But you have a special needs ministry." And she looked at me and said, "You don't have special needs. You will never understand what it feels like to be a parent of a kid with special needs, to go to a church where they actually want him." Right. And your church is that one of those churches.
That's right.
I think.
That's right.
Okay, what does the I stand for?
We're going to interact with our community by improving everything here, making it a place people want to hang out and be at.
So you're going to upgrade the lobby?
Upgrade the lobby.
Okay, good. So let me tell you why that's a big deal.
Patio.
We have a church in Granite Bay with a really lame lobby. I mean, it's boring. I took pictures of yours already. We're going to steal some of it. We built a second site called we have 5 sites now. We built a second site, Blue Oaks, launched it a year ago. About 2,500 people are going there now. It's kind of a crazy explosion. And we finally figured out the lobby is more important than the worship center. And so here's what I hope happens in your lobby. We built a lobby where we basically wanted somebody to come to church and never leave. So when you walk into our lobby, there's a 3-story high kids play structure. There is a cafe with a wood-fired pizza grill. And all kinds of other coffee and all that kind of other stuff. There's a play area, there's another play area, a park with an fake oak tree in California, in there. And all this stuff in this lobby. And what's interesting about that is this. After church, when we get up, we say, "Hey, if you're a first-time visitor, go to our welcome center. They will give you a coupon for a free pizza." Nobody leaves. All visitors stay. And then what happened is this. Our lobby is now, that lobby is open from 7 in the morning till about 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock at night. Right now, there'll be 100 people in that lobby. And a buddy of mine was walking by, 4 women, 4 sharp kind of Roseville women were sitting there, their kids were in the play area, and he was walking by and he overheard them say, these women are like, "I don't know what this place is, but we come here every day. This is the best thing for kids in town. I don't know what it is."
How do you know what it is?
Can you think of a better thing to have going on in your church than unchurched people coming to your building, not even knowing what you are? This is a good thing. Okay,
That's good.
taking up all my time here.
T?
The T.
Train leaders in our community, church community and beyond. Intern program we're having for students.
Raising up the next generation of Christian leaders. And
right.
H is?
H, we're going to, what is the H?
Okay, here. It's kids, basically.
Kids. Yeah, blow out the kids area with our growth
You know what?
theme. all of that.
Here, let's loosen this. It's obviously cutting off oxygen to the brain. So this is kids. Let me tell you why those last 2 are a really big deal. Is anybody concerned about the future of our country? Yeah, check out the presidential candidates we got. Don't write me. You know what's interesting is you are going to spend a ton of money raising up the next generation of Christian leaders and reaching kids in your community. In my opinion, whoever wins the kids and trains the next generation, whoever wins the kids wins the future of our country, not who wins the White House. Okay? And so, yeah, get out of here. So with your permission, I will steal this, take this back to home and say, this is our new campaign. Is that all? And so I encourage you all to not give to this one, but to, no, I'm kidding. I got to get serious here. I got to tell you this, though. I'm going back tomorrow. It's a huge deal. I mean, like suit. It's a whole deal, and I'm the speaker at this thing. And the reason I'm going there is I built a relationship with this guy. He's down in the city, I'm in the suburbs, all that kind of stuff. We've been friends for a lot of years. He's an unbelievably well-respected, now 78-year-old pastor. He was married for over 50 years, ministry for over 50 years. I mean, just an amazing guy. And he invited me down to preach to his church. Has anybody been in a long, phenomenal African-American worship service? Anybody? It goes on for like days. And so I get there, and I'm sitting in the front row with him, and an offering goes by. And about a half an hour later, another offering goes by. Half an hour later, another offering goes by. Another. 7 offerings go by. And finally, and it's about 2 hours, 7 offerings. Finally, I hit the pastor, and I go, hey, what's the deal? He goes, here's how we do it on the south side, my white brother. He goes, we take an offering. They count it. It ain't enough. We take another offering. They count that. It ain't enough. And then he looks at me and he goes, it was 7. Somebody had come out and handed him he goes, it was 7 this morning. He goes, this is a great line. He goes, here's how we do it in the south side. He said, we just keep taking offerings till God has what God needs. And I thought, what works in California could work in Colorado tonight. I didn't think so either. So what I want to do is, I hope that God works in your hearts by the time I'm done speaking, and it won't be long, so that when you fill this card out, it's God's right number the first time. You don't have to go through this 7 times. Got it? And what I really want to say is this. The theme of your campaign is what? Daring faith. And if I can just talk honestly with you for a second, this is going to be politically incorrect. Is that okay here in Colorado? Lots of people are bashing the Christian church these days and criticizing Christians and the Christian church. Books have been written, Death by Church, Loving God When You Can't Stand the Church. And I have a confession to make tonight, and the confession is this. And I know this is politically incorrect, and it might be because I grew up outside it, but here's my confession. To be honest with you, I love the church. Good, there's 2 of us. I love the Christian church, and let me tell you why. It was the Christian church that introduced me to Jesus at 19 years old when I was an atheist and had actually talked one of the guys in that church out of being a Christian. This does not look good on the pastor's resume. It was the Christian church that healed my image of God, healed my image of myself. It was the Christian church that challenged me to grow. It was the Christian church that gave me opportunities to serve and fail and never excommunicated me. It was the Christian church that let me lead worship one time. And it was the Christian church that helped me figure out I should never, ever do that again to the glory of God. It was the Christian church. It was Christians in the church that healed my image of marriage and that needed to be healed. I grew up in an executive, jet-set, atheist home in Southern California. Guys wanted to run my dad for governor of California. He turned them down. They ran a guy named Ronald Reagan instead. And I grew up in that family. My mom and dad ended up being basically alcoholics and then got divorced. Their divorce was really no great surprise. And the reason their divorce was no great surprise was both sets of their parents, my grandparents, were divorced. Matter of fact, my mom had 2 sisters, married and divorced. One of her sisters was married and divorced 3 times. One of her marriages only lasted 3 days. I do. I don't. Here's the deal. I have sisters, okay? One's been married and divorced 4 times. The other just does. As far as you go back, you take my family, you go back 150 years in my family tree. There is not one lasting marriage in 150 years. Carol and I met Christ in the church. Had my image of God, myself, and marriage healed in the church. Carol and I just celebrated our 32nd wedding anniversary. And the reason that's a big deal is this. We now have the longest running marriage in the history of my family tree. And I just love it. I just love it when somebody goes, oh, I just don't think Jesus, the Bible, and the church doesn't make any difference. All I have to do is get out my family tree and say, Jesus Christ, and putting roots down in a church, the Christian church, can heal everything and break 150 years of destructive family patterns. Matter of fact, my family tree, we cut the sucker down. My wife and I are building a whole new tree. We're starting our own family tree. Probably so are you. And you know what? Now, why am I saying all this? Because here's what I want to say. And nobody ever says this stuff in church, okay? And you didn't ask me to say it. I want to give you 3 reasons that when you fill out that card, you need to go beyond tipping and beyond tithing and beyond, like, what can we afford? You need to get into sacrificial generosity mode and not stop till you've heard from God. And I want to give you 3 reasons. Basically, I want to tell you this. I want to tell you why your church is a really big deal. Why your church is a big deal. In other words, why there's no more important meeting right now in Colorado than what's going on here. Number 1, your church is a big deal because this is where people find God. This is where people find God. Now, why is that a big deal? Because our country is, would you agree, our country is erasing Jesus and Christian values right out of our country and has been for about 70 years. Would you all agree? I mean, Starbucks can't put Merry Christmas on a cup. Matter of fact, are you aware of this? I told our church, you want it on the cup, when they ask you what your name is, just say Merry Christmas. They'll write it on the cup for you. And next Christmas, that'll be helpful. Here's the deal. I'm going to walk you through, this is going to be smart. Y'all with me? Okay, I want to walk you through when you reject Jesus and all of his values, you lose something. We have lost one thing every decade for the last 7 decades that you can't afford to lose. For example, was anybody around here in the 1950s? Anybody here in the 1950s? Okay, you're old. Here it is. In the 1950s, Americans lost, here it is, innocence. I mean, the innocence, Hollywood started shaping values in the 1950s. I mean, music, all this kind of stuff. Would you agree innocence went out the window in the 50s and has never come back? And it's actually getting worse and worse and worse. So in the 50s, Americans lost. Okay, now, was anybody around for the 60s? Does anybody remember the 60s? In the 60s, Americans lost, here it is, authority. Remember that? Here's the phrase for the 60s, don't trust anyone over 30. And by the way, after the 1960s, check out respect for authority. A policeman, if you're a police officer in here, I apologize, man. Respect for you has gone down. Respect for biblical authority has gone down. Not in this church, but in other whole denominations. Where's that rooted? The 1960s. And was anybody around for the 1970s? Okay, check this out. In the 1970s, Americans lost, here it is. Americans lost love. Remember this? It was the free love decade. Remember that? And it was if it feels good, do it. And one social scientist said this, in the 1970s, Americans starving for love settled for sex, and that's never changed. I mean, it's a mess. Teenagers today are the greatest casualty of the 70s sexual revolution. Now, was anybody around for the 1980s? Almost all, okay, 1980s. What did we lose in the 1980s? All sense of style. How many of you would agree with this? Matter of fact, the guy on the right is your senior pastor. No, I'm kidding. The guy in the middle, does anybody recognize him? That is Bayside's worship pastor Lincoln Brewster in his days with Journey. And now, in the 1980s, what did we really lose? We lost, here it is, we lost values. Matter of fact, the big movie for the 1980s was the movie, anybody remember? Wall Street, starring an actor named Michael Douglas, playing a character named Gordon Gekko, and his big phrase was this: greed is good. Check out tithing records after 1980. American Christians stopped tithing and started tipping because our culture screwed up their values. Okay? Now, the 1990s, who was around for the 90s? I should be unanimous in here. The 1990s, here's what we lost in the 1990s. We lost faith that the future would be better than the past. Oklahoma Federal Building got bombed. All this kind of stuff happened in the 1990s. And then it got worse. The last day of the 1990s introduced us to a thing called Y2K. Remember that? So in the 1990s, here we go. That brought in the years 2000s. Okay? And in the 2000s, Americans lost, here it is, security. All of a sudden, our computer's not safe. Our country's not safe. All that kind of stuff. By the way, anybody here stockpile food? Come on, you're in church. You got, okay? You studied a little bit. My wife and I had 4 kids in a Chrysler minivan. We didn't stockpile food. If we needed food, we had enough French fries stuffed in the seats of that van to last us for decades. Now, what happened is this. It starts with Y2K. That's followed by 9/11. Followed by all kinds of other upheavals and world terrorism, and Americans now feel less secure as a nation and as individuals than they ever have at any time in their history of our country. And this new decade's only 6 years old. What is it? We feel like because of those things, Americans have lost hope. Americans have lost hope. Now, here's the deal. Does this ring true, by the way? Check this out. You put them all together. Americans now have lost all these things. The problem is this: you cannot be spiritually healthy, build a healthy marriage, raise healthy kids, be psychologically and emotionally healthy without innocence, authority, love, values, faith, security. By the way, how do you build a healthy family without innocence or authority, love, faith, values? You can't do it. And the problem is this: Americans are now starving for those things. Wouldn't you agree? The problem is, can they get it from our culture? No, our culture is what took those away. Americans are starving. By the way, let's put that back up for just a second, the slide. Americans are starving for these things. The only place you find those is in a relationship with Jesus Christ in a church. What do you mean by that? Where do you find innocence? The forgiveness of God. Where do you find authority? The Word of God. Where do you find love? The love of God and the love of God's people. Where do you find values? The Word of God, teaching ministry of the church. Where do you find faith? That's obvious. Security, the arms of God. Where do you find hope? The promises of God. We have the antidote to every single thing that has been screwed up for the last 7 decades. This could be an unbelievable decade. In my opinion, hold your applause, I don't have time. In my opinion, if the Christian church, when the Christian church gets it right, and it doesn't very often, but when the Christian church gets it right, we are the most powerful force for God and for good in our culture. And yours is one of the churches. Read your campaign. You're getting it right. Number 1 is this: why does your church matter? Number 1, because here's where people discover God. Let me give you a second reason it matters. This is where people discover truth. It's where they discover truth. I am in churches all the time where they're debating whether to throw out the Bible with your current pastor and your staff. That will never be a problem around here, thank God. Okay? And it's where people discover truth. The third thing is this: your church is where the community finds help. This is where the community finds help. This is embarrassing to admit, but our church, God had to slap me upside the head 8 years ago and totally changed my church. At that point, we were the fastest growing church north of Los Angeles, and I went to Newport Beach for an intense study with a few pastors, kind of like these round tables are doing, and we were studying Acts chapter 2. and just studied it, talked about ministry and what does it look like. And in Acts chapter 2, I have never recovered from this living room that I was in. Acts chapter 2, it says this, selling their possessions and goods. It says they gave to anybody who had needs. The guy went up and said, he wrote this on a board. He wrote, good deeds. The early church started with good deeds. 2 verses later, it says, and they had favor with God and all the people. Do Christians have favor with people in America right now? No. He went up and he said, interesting. Their good deeds led to goodwill. The very next verse says, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. And he went to the board and he wrote, good news. And I sat in my chair and I stared at that. I choked up. I was embarrassed. I felt ashamed. And something got lit in my fire. And I thought this, the early church, the way the early Christians did ministry was this, okay? Their good deeds led to goodwill, which led to openness to the good news. And I sat there and I went, like almost every one of the 350,000 Christian churches in America, I've been delivering the good news without good deeds, so there's no good will. And I literally went back and I called my staff together, I apologized, and I said, if we burn this church down, we will get this right. We had done 3 capital campaigns and kept all the money for ourselves to build nicer buildings. Matter of fact, last year, American churches and Christian institutions raised $6 billion in capital campaigns and kept all of the money, almost all of them, to have nice buildings be nicer, which is why Christians in America are known for having really nice stuff and shrunken hearts. And I went, our next campaign, we are gonna have to take at least 10% of it and just give it away to make some compassion stuff happen. So when I got, by the way, I got some stuff on you guys before I went in here, because it wasn't a campaign, you're doing what I call a compassion first campaign. Can you imagine, matter of fact, you were the 2nd or 3rd church in the Midwest in history to do what you're doing. And I hope you become the pattern, because here's the deal. If American churches, if every capital campaign in America were a compassion first campaign, if you took 10% of everything Christians raise, just like you're doing, that would be $500 million a year minimum going into causes in America, and we would be known as the people changing and caring and helping and hurting people instead of just those people with nice buildings. Would that be a great change? Be a great change. And if you don't think it works, our church is nearby a mall, and at Nordstrom's anchors, it's called the Galleria Mall. About a year or so ago, about 4 years ago, the mall, some terrorist tried to burn it down, and he burned about 1/5 of the mall. And so what happened is we contacted the mall and said, hey, what's going to go on? And they said, well, it's kind of a troubled thing. I said, what's up? And they said, we said, who's going to be hurt? And they said, basically, not the stores, not the full-time people, but the day laborers just all got laid off. They don't have insurance, they don't have workers, any of this stuff. And a lot of them are Spanish-speaking Hispanics. And so we said, let's help them. So I walked into church next week, told the story, and I said, we're going to take a second offering. And we're not keeping a dime of the second offering. Our goal is to raise $30,000, and we're going to go help these folks. Our people did not give $30,000. They did give $70,000. We went and met with the mall, and then met with the cities of Roseville and Rockland, and for the next 18 months to 24 months, we paid all their apartment rents, we kept heat on, lights on, kept kids in school, got food for folks, and kept all of these folks. I still get letters from these people. Then what happened this year is the mall contacted us and said, hey, how'd you like to do some creative stuff? So they gave us the empty store at Christmas right next to Nordstrom's. And so we created a thing called Drop and Shop. Our children's ministry did day camps for kids in there, and if you were a mom, a frazzled jar at Christmas, you could go in there, drop your kids off for 3 hours for free and go shopping. And our children's ministry handled kids. And then we set up a free gift wrapping thing right in the middle of the mall, and if you could have all your presents wrapped for free, and if you wanted to make a donation, we didn't keep a dime of that went to 5 community causes. Well, the backstory of this is this. The Sacramento atheist organization and the Sacramento LGBT community found out that the mall had invited our church in, and they called the mall to protest. And you know what the mall told them? The mall said, when we were firebombed and our people were hurting, we never heard from you. This church is the organization that cares most about the community. We are honored to be partnered with them. We're sticking with this, so pick it if you want. It was awesome. And I think your church, when I read through this, I went, oh man, Colorado is a compassion first church. This is a really good thing. So to wrap this up, I basically want to say this. Your theme is daring faith. And if did you all get this out for a second? Okay, by the way, get this out and don't open it yet. Just everybody kind of pass this around. It says daring faith. Make sure your husband has one of his own. And what I want to do is this. When I saw the theme daring faith, I wrote a whole chapter on that in Jesus Called. And because, get this out and then just look up here for a second. Okay, get this out, hold on. Daring faith is, in my opinion, there's a new idol in America. And this has been bothering me, so I thought I'd let it come and bother you. There's a new idol in America, and you know what it is? It's not rock, it's not sex, drugs, or else they're still around. It's the new idol is this: safety. It's the idol of safety. Stay in the boat. It's safety first. Matter of fact, I made a list. Would you agree with this? We are the most seat-belted, airbagged, bike helmeted, knee pad wearing, hyper-insured, peanut avoiding, gluten-free, sunscreen slathering, car door locking, massively password protected, inoculated generation in history. And all it's done is made us more afraid of everything. And some of you look at me and go, what do you mean by that? I'll give you an example, okay? As a matter of fact, I made a list. Most Christians don't give. Why? It might not be safe. Most Christians don't share their faith. It might not be safe. Most Christians never take a stand, never take a risk. And the problem is this: playing it safe shrinks our lives, shrinks our faith, shrinks our impact, shrinks God, and leaves us with shrunken up, shriveled hearts, and then we die, and we'll spend all of eternity wondering why we never went for it. And you read more about that in my book. This whole thing sets me off. I cannot find one verse in the Bible where Jesus says, come, follow me. Stay in the boat. Matter of fact, Jesus, I'm going to give you two verses. One, Jesus said, the other I made up. Jesus said, whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Whoever loses their life for me will save it. Here's my verse. Go into all the world and have successful careers and drive expensive cars and build big houses and live safe, respectable lives. First Hallucinations 3:16. And so what I want to do is just, if I can leave you with this, and then I'll bring up a better dressed pastor. What I want to do is this: if you would open this up, I love this. 7 steps for discerning God's voice. Right? Because here's the deal. See this card here? In a few minutes, your pastor is going to walk you through this. You're going to fill this out, and you're going to make a life-changing, future-enhancing decision. Now, how do you know what number to put on here? How do you know what to give? Okay? The only question you got to ask, you don't have to ask, what does Ray want me to give? That's the wrong question. What does John want us to give? That's the wrong question. Now, bring it up to us. We'll fill it out for you if you want. But your only question is this: not what do we want us to give? What does God want us to give? How do you figure this out? This is genius. This will appear at a church in California soon. Go to number 3. Remember, our theme is equal sacrifice, not equal gifts. America will only be the nation God wants it to be when Christians get into sacrificial giving. I'll give you an example. We did our last campaign at our church. We had a family in our church, and they had a family meeting, and the family said, well, I don't think we can give because our month and our money end at the same time. And if you know what that's like? And the teenage daughter, sophomore girl, said, what if we did what Pastor Ray said? What if we sacrifice? And the dad goes, what do you mean? She goes, what if I gave up my phone for 3 years? In your case, 2. What if I gave up my phone for 2 years? Would that help? Dad said, your phone bill would pay the entire church mortgage off, babe, yeah. This sophomore girl slid her phone to the middle of the table and said, I'll give my phone up for 2 years. Let's give that money to God. Now, who else is in? By the time they were done, this family said, we were going to lease a car. What if we just kept the beater going for 3 years and we give God all the lease money? What else can we sacrifice? And this family, whose month and money ended at the same time, pledged and gave $18,000 when they didn't think they could. Just by sacrificing a few things most people never had. My funnest story was this. The minute I talk about sacrifice, it was a banquet like this. There was a new couple in our church there. They had met Christ out of a rough background, really fun, sort of party type people. And they came up and they said, Pastor Ray, we're so excited. We know how we're going to give a ton of money. And I said, oh, that's great. And they said, no, you don't get it. They said, we're going to sacrifice. I said, what's that? And they said, well, we just became Christians 3 weeks ago. And they said, we're going to stop drinking and stop smoking for 3 years. And for the next 3 years, we're going to give all of our alcohol and tobacco money to the church. And that's a ton of money. By the way, is this a good step? Yeah, I looked at him and said, why don't we make that permanent? Now, number 4 is this: will I give by reason or by revelation? And so you can sit there and you can go, okay, here's our balance sheet, and here's this, and we can only afford to give that, so we'll reason this out and give that. Or you can just say, God, give through me. First time we did this, my wife and I are praying. I'm a pastor, okay? I'm a church plant pastor. Got no money and 4 kids in a minivan. And Carol and I started praying about it because I'm thinking, hey, $15 ought to do it. And every time by the way, does this happen to you? Every time you pray about it, God raised the number. Does that happen to anybody else here? Yes, it's very irritating. And we just keep raising the number. And finally, by the time we're done, of the $15, we filled out a pledge for $60,000. And I had no idea how that was going to happen. 3 years later, I wrote a $284 check and paid off the $60,000. To this day, I still cannot tell you how it happened. But my faith in God's ability to do miracles got big, and your life turns into an adventure when you trust God and actually take a leap of faith. Go to the next one, okay? Number, hold a family conference, meet with a spiritual friend. In other words, who's married here? Good. When John gets up here, huddle together and agree on what you write. That'll prevent alimony, okay? It's got to be a family oneness thing, okay? And if you go, by the way, I also love this. Go over 5 ways to give. You can give cash if you have ID. Second is, you can make a 24-month giving pledge. That's what Carol and I did. We're like, 60 grand. Oh, it's in my other wallet. No, we just basically went, how much is that a month? We made that pledge and trusted God for it to come in, okay? They set up a Daring Faith Online Giving, which is a brilliant way to do this. I would encourage you all to do this because then forgetfulness is no longer a problem and faithfulness takes over. The number 4 is this: give property, stocks, or other items of value. I have a list. Our last capital campaign, the following came in. Cars, tons of cars came in, land, a house in Lake Tahoe, stocks, boats, jewelry. One woman gave her a wedding ring. And she said, my husband walked out on me this year. God obviously has a better use for this than me right now. And she said, I'm keeping $5 out of my pledge, and I'm going to go buy chicken in honor of my husband. And one kid gave 7 Chuck E. Cheese tokens, a kid. And then what happens is this. And by the way, number 5, make Crossroads a beneficiary in your will. Would you write in number 6 below there? Okay, we're gonna fix this. Here we go. Number 6. Here it is. 2 words. Trust God. Trust God. I feel sorry for Christians that don't sacrificially give because you're going, I guess I have a God I don't trust. What I mean by that is this. My secretary came to my office one day, and she's very happy, Cindy Euler. And she came into my office one day, and she goes, look at this. And she's crying. And she's never like that. And she goes, look at this. And she sets this big sack on my desk. It's a brown paper sack. and all crumpled up, and you can tell a ton of coins are in this thing. And then I open it up, and up on front, she goes, look inside, look inside. So I look inside, there's a bunch of crumpled up dollar bills, ones, a couple fives, but a bunch of crumpled up dollar bills. And then there's a note on the top. And I unwrap the note, and the note says, Dear Pastor Ray, we really, 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 5 reallys, wanted to go to Disneyland. But we think a new church would be better. Here is all our money. Courtney and Micah, age 5, age 7. I saw that here's all of our money. We had people give more than that. Do you think we had anybody in the eyes of God give more than that? No. Matter of fact, some of you in here, I would just get in sacrifice mode. Not, what can we afford? What's God telling you to do? Trust Him. Some of you, $10 is going to put you into sacrifice mode, but there are people in this room, you could write a check for $500,000 to $1 million and it would not dent your net worth. Some of you are going, I don't know why God's blessed me financially like this. I think He's blessed you. I can tell you exactly why. For this kind of stuff. He hasn't blessed. Don't pass it on to your kids. You'll spoil them rotten. And so what happens is, these kids, I'm reading this, I'm crying, I get my whole staff and I'm crying. And then what happens is this, I go, our church has got to see this. So I PowerPoint this and I show it to our church the next weekend. I go, for those of you who are thinking about giving and stuff, here's I brought the sack in, set it down. The whole place went crazy. People are crying, people are applauding. And you know what's fun? You can't outgive God. You can trust God. These kids gave up a trip to Disneyland, like a 2-day thing. As God would have it, at the 11:30 service that day, for the first and only time, we had a visiting executive from Disneyland who saw that, called my secretary on Monday morning, scholarshiped the kids and their family, not to a couple days at Disneyland, a week at Disneyland with a full paid week at the Disneyland on-site hotel. And both these kids are now running around going, what else can we give? Bill and Lynn King have been a couple. They're like you guys, faithful, been in our church forever. We can't drive them out of there. And Bill repairs Porsches. No, he's an amazing guy. And his wife comes up to me at the end of our last dinner like this, and she's all choked up. And she said, can I talk for a second? I said, yeah. And she said, I am so proud of my husband. And I said, why? She said, my husband just said to me, we're making a sacrificial pledge. Why don't we take it another step? He said, I was going to retire. We both know I was going to retire this year. He said, I want to work for 2 more years. Why don't we take everything I make my last 2 years and give that to God through this campaign? That'll help. And these are classy exec type people, these amazing people. She got all choked up and she looked at me and she said something I'll never forget. She looked at me and she said, they don't make many men like my husband anymore, do they? I am so proud of him. Just doesn't seem like they're making like men like this anymore. It'd be fun to go home and say, yeah, they are. They're just in Colorado. And John, why don't you come on up and take these folks through. I'm heading to the airport. I'll be calling him later to find out what happens tonight. But people, if you're married, huddle up, get that thing out. John will walk you through how to fill it. And I just want to say, it has been an honor. I'm so blessed. It has been an honor and a privilege to see what's happened here. I'm looking forward to coming back to seeing what happens. So give it up for your pastor, John. God bless.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. Love you. Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing that with us. Well, I think it's time for us to do what leaders do, and that's make our commitments. And as Ray was talking there, I started thinking, these final 10 minutes here, this is the most important decision we're going to make. in the history of our church. It's that important. And so let's do what leaders do. And we have the Daring Faith brochure right here. And I encourage you to take it out right now and let me walk you through it. On the inside flap there, and I'll walk you through it, and then let's fill it out in a moment. Let's not fill it out quite yet. Let's pray before we do. But you can see there's a place to put your name, address, phone number, email address so we can contact you. And then right below that, 2-year commitment to Daring Faith. That's what we've been asking everybody to pray about. And you'll mark on there whether you're given weekly, monthly for 24 months, yearly, one-time gift. And then in a moment, you'll put the total at the bottom right there. And then the first offering is what we will give on Celebration Weekend, May 21st, 22nd. So whatever you're committing to, that on Celebration Weekend, that will be your first installment towards what you're committing for 24 months. I hope that makes sense. And then I'm in, the total thing would be there at the bottom. And I really do think that, this is the most important decision that we can have. Some of us, this is the most important decision we'll make in our lifetime. A decision that will affect all eternity. It really will. And that's why I don't hesitate. I don't hesitate for a second to ask people to sacrifice financially to giving to God's work. This vision of Daring Faith is so clear, and it's so exciting. And I think if Daring Faith wins, you know what? Everybody wins. Our community wins. Our children and students win. Our special needs people win. Everybody wins. People dying in the Congo win if Daring Faith wins. And so I would just echo what Ray says. Seek God's guidance and do what leaders do and fill that out. And then what we're going to do in a moment, we have these coolers up front, Daring Faith coolers. We're going to put this one up on the stage in a moment. We'll open them up. And I do want us to take a moment to pray. And if you're with your spouse or a close friend, and talk, because you may have come in and you already had a commitment in mind you were going to make, but now God is telling you, that was a safe commitment. God's challenged you to do more. And listen to God's voice and respond to that. And so why don't we take a moment right now, and we'll play some music, soft music in here. And why don't you talk together as spouses and pray one more time before you fill that out. And Phyllis and I are going to do it. We had something in mind, but we're going to talk and we're going to pray. And as you pray, maybe you would pray for our church. Maybe as you're together, pray that God would bless Daring Faith and God's work here at Crossroads. And God would pour out His blessing upon us, and that more and more people will come to know Christ through these efforts. I think all of us know people that are far from God. All of us know people that maybe are trying their own way to make it through life, but slowly but surely they're figuring out that's not working. It's not at all. That they're gonna find out that it's only through the power of Christ that we find the security we all want, the love, the hope that we all need. And so we know people. Maybe you'd pray for people that would come to know Christ through these Daring Faith endeavors. And it may be somebody in your family. Maybe it's a friend, but we all know people. But just maybe you would pray, God, use Crossroads to reach more and more people. And maybe you'd say, God, bless Special Friends ministry at Crossroads and outside of our church that we're going to help. Bless our children's ministry, our student ministry, and organizations we're going to help in the community. Bless the new churches that we're going to be starting in the next 5 years. Bless the ministry in the Congo that's trying to help people heal, trying to help people just to live. Ask God to bless them, but just ask that God's hope would continue to shine through all of us. But I'm going to give you an opportunity to just spend some time in prayer, and then when you're ready, fill that out. And then I'll lead us as we bring our commitments into the Daring Faith coolers that we have up here. So let's take that time to pray and pause before God, and then fill this out when you're ready to. You know, I failed to say, after you fill it out, put it in the envelope. Is there an envelope there? Yeah, let's put them in the envelopes. Whenever you're ready, and come back to your seat then, and we're going to worship for a moment, then I'll pray and we'll be gone. I think because we're running a little late, I think I'm going to pray and give a final instruction, and then we'll go. But let's bow our heads together. God, we come just so thankful from the bottom of our hearts for all that you've done for us and for giving birth to this church 20 years ago, this whole thing. And the whole idea of the church and the whole idea of this one here, God, was your idea. And little did we know that 20 years later we would be in this facility and have staff and ministries. And God, we want to, all our hearts are about serving our community and our region, our nation, our world even more. And God, there's more needs. There's more that needs to be done. And there's more that need to know you around us right here in our community and beyond. And as Ray said, we recognize our world is so broken. And God, it's your love. And it's your love that has the power to fix it. And we ask you to do that and to do it through us. And we're recipients of your love, every one of us. And you call us that have received your love into our lives, that has changed our lives. You call us to be carriers of your love and your hope, to extend it now in our region. And so with our prayers and our resources that you've entrusted to us, we commit them all back to you. And God, we ask through this daring faith offering of these leaders that your love and compassion would go out from here into this world. And God, please be pleased with our commitments. Be pleased with them. And we pray this in Jesus' name. And everybody agreed, said? Amen. Amen. Couple reminders before we go. Be in prayer for the rest of the church. Now, as we come together on Celebration Weekend, that's May 21st and 22nd. Be praying, one, that many people will be here on that weekend, and that they'll be all prayed up. They'll be ready to sacrifice and make their commitments that weekend. And get your friends here. If you're in a life group, serving team, people in your community, that attend Crossroads, encourage them to be here on that celebration weekend. And then on May 21st, 22nd, I'm going to ask all the leaders, all of you, to fill out another commitment card. As leaders, we're leading the way. And you can just write on your commitment card, just like this one, that'll be in our program May 21st, 22nd, write duplicate across it, but fill that out again. But if God is speaking to you beyond tonight, and you leave here and God's tugging at your heart between now and then, and you want to increase your commitment on Celebration Weekend, fill it out, put your new commitment, and write on there, new commitment. And we'll collect that and add that and record that under your name. And then bring your first offering, your first fruits offering on Celebration Weekend. That one that you wrote down, that Phyllis and I wrote down that we're going to bring that one, and that's going to jumpstart everything that God's leading us to do through daring faith. So I hope that's clear. If you have any question about that, see me or one of our leadership team afterwards. But I can't thank you enough again for all that you do week in, week out at Crossroads, and for being here. And I could speak for Phyllis and myself in saying that there is no group of people that we would rather be on a daring faith adventure with than all of you. And so thank you. God bless you. Have a great night.